G'day everyone, welcome to the Outback Packers Podcast, the podcast where two mates from all the way across the globe have a yarn talking Packers football and the green and gold. I'm Nick Gregory, as always joined by my co-host Iowa Joe. Today welcoming on the illustrious host of the Underage Packers Podcast, Joey Van Zummeren. Today we're going with Joey. There's no Big B, no Brandon on today, but I've been really keen to finally meet Joey. We're kind of, the youngest podcasters on the scene here, kind of the young blood, the eventual successors to Andy Herman and Jacob Westendorf and Peter Bukowski, obviously. But no, in all seriousness, it's really lovely to have you on. It's nice to finally meet you. I missed you on our live stream. How are you doing, Joey?
Absolutely, I'm doing great. I'm feeling a little bit like Rashawn Gary replacing Clay Matthews since you guys had Wes Hodkwitz last week. I mean, he could be mistaken for a 19-year-old at a glance. So, and we both have brown curly hair with glasses. So we're pretty much the same here. So in all seriousness, so thank you guys so much for having me on. This is definitely the latest I've ever done a podcast, but it should be a good time.
You know what's funny? You mentioned Wes. Is I just watched your guys' cheese curd video.
Oh,
And yeah, he's only like 2 or 3 years younger than me, but he looks like he could have been in high school yesterday.
Yeah, I know. I mean, the first time I saw him in person, I was like 2 inches taller than him.
I know. I like dwarfed over him when I was when I caught him at Lambeau.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
well, one day that'll be me, guys. I'll definitely see him. I'll also get a tower over him, hopefully.
Probably. I mean, I love Wes, but Wes is not a big guy at all.
No.
Yeah. Every week we kind of like to just do a bit of a glance around the league and kind of see what's happening. You guys obviously done the cheese curd ranking. I just want to talk a little bit about, you guys obviously done the co-op with Hey We Like Your Pod, Matt Pickett and Dawn DeQuisto. The content creator rankings, it's really cool for these guys to get recognition around the kind of the landscape. I see Tom Rossi came in at number 1. I mean, how do you feel having been able to get in contact with all these guys now?
Yeah, it's amazing because 3 years ago, when me and Big B started this podcast, all 10 of those people on the list and many others were people that we just dreamed of, like getting a Twitter like from. Like I remember, the aforementioned Wes Hodkwitz. We had a Twitter conversation with him, not even like in private messages or anything, but we just like replied to one of his tweets and he replied back to us, and that was like, oh my God moment. So now to like have met all those people, film stuff with them is awesome, and all 10 of those people on that list and all of the other people that didn't make that list are all great Packers content creators. And I'm so glad that we have so many excellent creative people making content about the Packers.
I got 2 things.
Okay.
One, you got to update your cheese curd list. I don't know if you saw me message you on.
I did, yeah.
Cheesesteak Rebellion.
Okay.
It's amazing. It's a Star Wars themed bar / cheesesteak restaurant, and they make authentic Philadelphia cheesesteaks, and their cheese curds are amazing.
Interesting.
They're the best I've ever had up there, and I've been going to Green Bay or to Wisconsin since I was itty bitty.
Is it in the downtown area of Green Bay?
It's not actually that far off from Lambeau.
Okay.
I think it's maybe a couple miles off of Lambeau. It's on the other side of the tracks. So you would head down. I know this is really interesting for the people listening right now, but not Oneida, but the other one that runs. What is it? And then you run by like a quick trip and all that, and then you cross the tracks, and it's off in that area somewhere.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. People who are actually from there are like, why can't you just name the roads? It's like, it's but they were amazing. I obviously being a Star Wars fan, I was going to hit the place anyway, but it was great food. Hopefully, maybe one of these days they can like be our official sponsor.
Yeah.
That was amazing. And number 2, I'm really disappointed that we weren't number 1 on all your lists.
I'm sorry.
It's 10 Outback Packers.
Yeah. Hey, we didn't make the list either, so I think that says enough too.
Well, it's something I have to ask about as someone who's like, I'm like, by trade, I'm a chef, and I see Americans, always like into like the cheese curd thing. I've only ever had cheese curds like once in my life. It was on like a poutine, and we had to like buy them in. It was this whole big deal. But like, what is this like thing with cheese curds? I mean, why are they so popular?
Fried food.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. Like, I think part of it, especially for these kind of like out of towners like me who are also Packers fans, it's like embracing that Wisconsin Green Bay culture that we're not a part of. So that's part of like the cult aspect of it, but then also it is really good. Like I haven't had many bad cheese curds.
It's basically like the American fascination with fried food, period. Mm-hmm. I mean, that it's like if you were to go to a state fair, you'd get like deep fried Oreos or deep fried, hell, in Iowa State Fair, you get deep fried sticks of butter. And so, I mean, it's deep fry everything, but Wisconsin being one of the major dairy states in the United States, cheeseheads for a reason. Mm-hmm. They include cheese on everything. My dad's got a friend that eats a slice of cheese on his apple pie. And so, I mean, and he's from Wisconsin. So, I mean, it's all that they incorporate cheese on everything. So they just batter up a cheese curd and fry her up.
Well, I will say, like, as like a Filipino as well, it's quite common in the Philippines to have like kind of like Kraft single type cheese. Like they use that on a lot of like desserts. There's a dessert called ensaymada, and it's like kind of basically like a muffin, I guess, like a sweet roll kind of thing, and they grate on like a block of like the fake Kraft cheese on top. So I mean, I can't really like make fun of you. I'm more just like curious because like and I always see the thing with like Culver's has like the curd burger thing, and it's like a big deep fried cheese curd on top of the burger. Like
huge.
I've had the curder burger 2 times. The second time was a much better experience, but it is not I mean, I love it for like the memeability of it, I guess, but it is not a great burger.
I'm getting too old for that stuff. It's going to cause a heart attack pretty quick. So, but no, I've never really had bad curds, except for one time in one place, and it's really weird. Iowa City has a Quick Star, which is basically Quick Trip. It just for some reason they have to call it Quick Star in Iowa, and their cheese curds suck. And that's hard to say because it's a Wisconsin-based store and all that, but they're mushy, they're nasty, and I've given them a couple of different chances thinking, all right, well, maybe I came in on a bad day or whatever, and they were horrible.
Yeah. The funny thing about filming that cheese curd video last year was that like it wasn't like we got the cheese curds and ate them in 10 minutes, especially on that last day of filming. We had like 2 or 3 more places we needed to stop at, and they were all around. So I was driving to downtown Green Bay for Copper State Brewing Co. and then like heading back to Kroll's. So by the time we ate the ones from Kroll's, they had been like out for 2 hours. I think we tried to microwave them, but they were awful after all that time. I gave them the real rating probably should have been like a 2 out of 10, but because I love Kroll so much and I knew like this was not their best go at it, I gave them a 6.
Well, and if you would have said anything bad about Kroll's, they would have not allowed you back in the state of Wisconsin again. So
yeah, definitely.
But sidetracking a little bit like I normally do. What are your normal hit-ups when you go to Green Bay? Not just food, but I mean your normal stops.
Yeah, definitely. So one of the great places that I've been going since I was really young. My dad is from Appleton, so I've had plenty of trips up there for family and everything. But Uncle Mike's Bakery, which I think might be in De Pere, they have some great donuts, some great cookies there. As far as restaurants go, I love, first day in Green Bay, I always got to hit up Stadium View, some great burgers there. I'm blanking on the name, but I know it's like a historic restaurant in the downtown area where the old train tracks used to run through, and they preserve those. Yeah, I'm completely blanking on the name, but that's great too. And I'm sure there's people out there that know what I'm talking about. Yeah, exactly. And then also 1919 in the stadium. It's corporate for sure, but
right.
It's good food there for sure.
Now, like, what other non-restaurant type places do you hit up? Like, whenever I go up there, I've got to hit like what is it, Card and Coin, and
was my first answer.
Yeah. And then just recently I started kind of getting into comic books again. So I went to Powers Comics, which oddly enough, my buddy Wes tells me that is like co-owned by Mike Daniels.
Oh.
So,
I remember reading about that.
Yeah. And I didn't know, cause I've never really been a comic book guy, but, again, sidetrack a little bit, but I'm a big Turtles fan, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Okay. That was some of the first cartoons I watched, and of course I was like 5 when the first movie came out and all that stuff. Well, I was never big in the comics. Well, they just released a new graphic novel called The Last Ronin, and I saw the trailer of it, and I was thinking, man, this is this must be one of the animated movie, like, the DC animated universe, or something like that. Or it's a new video game or whatever, and no, it was a comic book trailer, and I was like, what? So I went in there and got The Last Ronin, and it was great. So that's a new spot that I go. And then what's the other one? We go to Appleton. I was blanking on the name for the, because they've got it used to be In the Game, but it's basically Waukesha Sports and the Fox River Mall.
Okay.
And yeah, so.
Yeah, Card and Coin, Big B introduced me to that last year, and I'm sure his mother has lost so much money to that place. I mean, he could spend 3 hours in there. He's a very passionate card collector. I just love looking at all what they have. I actually have a canvas of the picture from 2011 where Rodgers is holding the trophy and Matthews is putting a belt on his shoulder. I got that from there last year and never bothered to hang it up. But that's a great place that I'll be hitting up every time from now on. I mean, Titletown, it's always fun to go there. And then, I mean, one of the things that we were talking about earlier about like embracing the Wisconsin culture is like kind of just going to small grocery stores and experiencing what that is like. Like I think we went to a Piggly Wiggly last year, which was my dad's first job. So that was a heck of a time. And then you talk about Appleton, remind me of another restaurant, which I've been going to since I was like 4, and they've changed the name a few times, but I think it was originally called Frank and Pat's Pizza, and then just Pat's, and now I think it's called Cranky Pat's or something like that. But
that's not the one near the Paper Radisson, is it? Or Paper Valley Radisson?
It might be. I couldn't tell you. I just know it's in downtown Appleton. Might be College Avenue. I don't know. But every time we go to Green Bay in the Appleton area, my dad's memory is unbelievable. Like, we crossed the bridge last year, and he said something like, I remember always seeing Jim from high school running on this bridge. And we were like, what the hell are you on about? What is going on right now? He'll point to a house and be like, oh, that's where Grandma Flo lived. It's an insane memory trip for him.
Well, us older folk have to have those memory trips every once in a while, No, I think I know what pizza place you're talking about. Do they make it in like a big oven and they sometimes sell it by the slice, or you walk up and you can say, well, I want this, and they give you a slice of that one?
Yeah, I think you're right. They
okay, yeah, I think that's just up from the well, I don't know what it's called. It used to be the Radisson, the Paper Valley Radisson, where they used to have Clubhouse Live.
Okay.
And that's where a lot of the visiting teams will stay during the season.
Gotcha.
So, and I've ate at the pizza place, and it was pretty good. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was pretty good.
Definitely. One of my favorite childhood moments there was they brought out this pizza that was just a really thick crust, and my whole family is there, and I say something like, that's as fat as BJ, as in BJ Raji, which was kind of mean to BJ, but my mom thought I said, like, that's a big ass pizza, and it was just mortified. But that's all my stories about Frank and Pat's pizza.
Well, Nick, are you ready to make the trip over yet?
I'm just wondering what the hell happened to Frank. I mean, must have been pretty.
Yeah, exactly. I know. I don't know if I think, like, instead of a usual like mom and pop shop, I think they might have been brother and sister. So, like, maybe not a divorce, but maybe some sibling drama that can get.
Hey, family split all the time, man.
Yeah.
My last question is, well, I guess it kind of answers it because you said your dad's from the Appleton area.
Mm-hmm.
So is that, because I know you mentioned that you're near St. Louis, is that how you got to be a Packer fan? Because it's surprising that being around St. Louis, you weren't more of a Rams fan than a Packer fan.
Yeah, definitely. So my dad grew up in Appleton and the whole Wisconsin area, lived in Milwaukee for a period of time until he was about 25, 30. So I've never lived in Appleton. All my siblings were all raised in the St. Louis area. So we were pretty much born in it and never really cared that much about St. Louis or the Rams.
Hey, that I understand, man. When I was a kid, they weren't much of a team, and then they started getting better. And then, of course, what year was that? Where Favre threw like 6 interceptions and... Yeah, so I wasn't a big St. Louis person either.
Yeah, it was basically just like a great time when the Packers came every 2 or 3 years.
All right, Nick, that's all I got for this moment. And I could live down memory lane in Wisconsin for like a whole 2 hours just because I spent a lot of time up there because my mom had family about an hour south of Green Bay, so. I had been going to training camp since I was like 9. So.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
Well, that's why we got to get this podcast bigger. Then we can just say, hey, hop on the plane, get over here, and we'll go to the game or something.
It's always just so interesting to hear about this stuff because, especially for you guys, it's like, you guys kind of grew up with it. And actually really funny, like last night, I was out at a gig, and one of the people who was serving me, she's like from Minnesota, and like her dad has like season tickets and stuff, and she's just here in Australia, like just chilling out for a bit. And it was just so random because like she noticed I was wearing like a Bucks jumper, and she's like, oh, like why are you a Bucks fan? Packers, blah blah blah. I'm just like, oh, Packers fan. It's like, oh. Because I'd feel pretty comfortable saying I'm probably the biggest either Packers or also NFL fan in this country. And it's hard to find people. I talk about this with like a bunch of other people as well, but it's always hard to find people who actually like understand the climate of the NFL. But yeah, it's always cool to hear like the stories that you guys have because like even the most diehard sports fans here in Australia aren't really anywhere close to the average person in America.
Yeah,
those are fighting words, Nick. I mean, there's Dan from Australia, and he's a listener of the podcast. He's going to come at you for saying you're the biggest fan down there.
Bring it on. I feel comfortable saying it.
We're gonna have the battle of the kangaroos going on down there. This is gonna be awesome.
So yeah, the last thing I just want to say before we get to the theme of the show is, I just want to say it's really cool to see that Trey Watson has joined Packaday. He's on the show with Morley and Westendorf now. As someone who's like such an avid Christian Watson fan, it's really interesting to get the perspective of someone who's his brother, obviously, and like grew up in the family. And that interview with him was so interesting, just hearing about all the stuff they went through as kids. I think it's such a unique perspective to get, and I really appreciate having him on there. And even aside from the fact that he's Christian's brother, on his own, he's a fantastic person. He loves to talk with people in general, have conversations, have debates, and he just seems like a really awesome guy. So I'm definitely happy to be hearing more from him on Packaday.
And he's also still playing, isn't he?
Right. For the St. Louis Battlehawks, I was just about to mention. Yes. He's a great player for them, too.
Yeah. So it's a great pickup. And of course, we love Jacob Westendorf. He seems to always find his way into our show somehow, some way. But, it's great that they got that going on. And, unfortunately, I didn't get to listen to the interview yet, so I don't know really what was said and all that. But, it sounds like Trey's going to be with them pretty much all season. So it's going to be a good thing. It's going to be a great thing to get his perspective after, hopefully Packer victories, no losses or anything like that. But especially this season with so much unknown, it's always great to get. I mean, we can sit here and talk game after game after game, but none of us have really set foot on a field like that to play that game. I played a little bit in high school. Nick, you played a little bit in high school. Joey, I'm not sure if you played a little bit in high school. Wait, you're still in high school? No. He's still playing at a professional level. So it's going to, having that kind of look upon things is going to be a great thing to have for this coming season. And I know they've been trying to replace Jamal Williams for the longest time, and they haven't had very much luck at it.
Yeah. Look, I just this seems like it's going to turn out much better for the Packers wide receiver having his family kind of involved in the fandom than it did for Equanimous St. Brown. That did not go too well for him, for those people that are aware with that lore, having family involved.
Hey, since you brought it up, I am really surprised there was not a lot more from his dad on that. Because all the stories that I heard when EQ was drafted, it's like, oh my God, we've got another LeVar Ball on our friggin' hand. And no, he really, he was involved, but you really didn't have that level of involvement in it. So that could be a whole nother podcast too. EQ's a great kid, but I'm really glad he's not with us anymore. That we don't have to deal with it.
Yeah. Well, guys, I'm happy to get into the meat of this episode now if you want to.
Absolutely.
Let's go.
Cool. So I just wanted to take this episode to kind of just have a think about what's going to happen this season with the Packers and kind of their road to the playoffs. This is a team that is not necessarily expected to get to the playoffs or make a big splash in the playoffs. But, I think some of us around here are like quite optimistic. The young blood is always very exciting. I just want to get an idea of what's going on in the NFC, kind of our contemporaries, people who are, who will be fighting through to get to the playoffs and, eventually, the second and third round of the playoffs. I just want to go and get your guys' opinions on what you expect from this team and where you think they could go.
Yeah, I think obviously it depends on Jordan Love and how he plays. But outside of that, this defense has got to step up. And with Jordan, I think he has to basically just not lose his team games. If he plays average to above average, doesn't turn the ball over, I could very easily see this team kind of slipping into 8-9 wins. And especially with NFC North this year, I know there's a lot of hype about the Lions, and I'm sure they'll be good. But outside of that, the three teams at the bottom, I wouldn't even lump the Bears in as the same category with us and the Vikings. between us and Minnesota, I think it's pretty much an even fight for that second spot in the division. Hey, who knows? Maybe the three at the top could all be in contention for that winning the division. But either way, I think this Packers team has potential to make the playoffs here.
And see, I'm going to disagree with you a little bit. And I know this is going to be surprising to hear, but I think Detroit's even got a better chance of fighting the Packers for the top of the division than Minnesota does, because the way I've seen the way Minnesota's been building this offseason, they're kind of in a soft reboot.
Right.
And so they've got question marks. Now, obviously, they've got a little bit more of an established quarterback than the Packers do right now. And, they've got an established wide receiver. We all hope that, our guys will take the next step. But, they're still young. The most veteran player on the team is, Bo Melton. And that's not even, that much. And, Christian and Romeo and Samari, only have one season under their belt. So they've got an established quarterback. They've got an established wide receiver. But the rest of it is a big question mark.
Yeah.
And, they've traded off guys. They've released guys. They're having cap issues. So, but I keep going with Detroit. We all laugh at what they did with their first pick, taking Jahmyr Gibb out of Alabama. They took a running back in the first round. Whatever. But look at what they did the rest of the draft. I mean, they did pretty good, and everybody kind of knocks Dan Campbell and everything, but they still got a hell of an offensive coordinator right there. Mm-hmm. And as long as Dan Campbell realizes he's who he has setting that offensive coordinator, that offense is going to thrive. I mean, look what they did with Jared Goff just last year.
Yeah.
Now, the defense is going to really need to step up for them, and they've been plugging and playing guys over there. I can't list them off the top of my head. Like I told these guys, I've been up since like 6 a.m., so my mind is like mush at the moment. But I know they've really been building their team up. They're not the same lovable losers that we've dealt with for many years. They're really starting to take those next big leaps. Now, are they Super Bowl contenders? No, probably not. But in a weak NFC North, they have a chance to actually, maybe even overcome the Packers, overcome the Vikings. We all know unless a miracle happens, everybody's going to pretty much overcome the Bears. So I'm not too worried about them at the moment. But unless for some reason the Monstars show up and give Justin Fields, 3 Hall of Fame quarterback abilities, whatever, just overnight, I don't see him progressing too much. And I still think he's a glorified running back playing the quarterback position. So, but they've got nice pieces on their team. If they actually had a quarterback and whatever, they could be dangerous. But right now, I'm seeing it as a two-way race with the Packers and the Lions. And I think I'm just saying the Packers out of, favoritism, bias. But I think it is going to be a three-way battle, but I think the top 2 positions are going to come down to Green Bay and Detroit.
No, yeah, that's very fair. Yeah, I do think that, in my opinion, I think Detroit probably wins the division. My thing with Detroit is that it just feels like this is kind of their year. I kind of fully expect Ben Johnson to be in a head coaching role this time next year, and in my opinion, Ben Johnson is kind of really more behind the success of that team than Dan Campbell is. And so, I think it'll be very interesting to see how they go this year. But going into the next year and the year after, there's some pretty big shoes to be filling with Ben Johnson, who is really the top 3 offensive coordinator in the league at the moment.
Well, I got to give Dan Campbell credit that he's at least a leader of a quarterback, or a quarterback of a coach.
Yeah.
He may not be the greatest schemer. He may not, but he can get his players to buy into him because he's that ride or die type of coach.
Sure.
It's not like you said, if the offensive coordinator goes off for a head coaching gig, they might be screwed if they can't replace him. But right now, they've got him leading the offense. They've got Dan Campbell being the ride or die. It's kind of like what I thought Matt LaFleur was when he first started in Green Bay. He was, all the hot takes we were getting, wake up and your piss is hot or whatever the hell that was. Or, all gas, no fucking brakes, that kind of shit. It kind of went away with LaFleur. I'm hoping it comes back now that there was a major change going on and some drama is actually out of the building now. But, Dan Campbell has been the same thing throughout. He's cried at press conferences, but that's the type of guy he is. He's emotional, he's invested, and that's the type of guy you want. Now, I mean, nowadays he's the type of guy you want, one that lives or dies with his players. I mean, obviously we would love to have a Vince Lombardi or a Tom Landry or something like that right now, but I don't think they could survive in today's game. But Dan Campbell is good at what he does.
Yeah.
I'd hire him as as maybe not a head coach, but bring him in as a coordinator, and he can be your ride or die guy while you're the guru.
Yeah, it will be interesting with the Lions over these next few years because, it was even a shock that Ben Johnson wasn't given a head coaching opportunity this offseason. And, it feels like while they are just on the rise now, it also feels like this year is almost the end of the window for them because they don't have a quarterback that they're developing. And Jared Goff is good. I mean, they probably got the best year of production out of him last year. What were you going to say, Joe?
They just drafted Hendon Hooker this year.
So that is right. Yeah.
They while he's coming back from injury, but this is a guy that they were talking that if he hadn't been injured could have been a mid to late first round, early second round pick. And they picked, I can't even remember what was it. It was late second, early third, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think you're right.
So had he not been injured, I'm not saying I don't know.
I don't say he was playing with the best receiving core in the college last year.
Yeah, but if you may have the best receiving core, but if you can't get the ball to him, your best receiving core is not going to do jack shit for you. I mean, I hate to say it like that, but it's kind of the truth, if you can't get him the ball.
The same argument you use for why Alabama quarterbacks aren't good, right?
Yeah, but the difference is while they were decent in college, there's not been one yet that's come across in the NFL that's been, Tua is the closest thing, but he can't stay healthy. Look how many have come out of Alabama that have had quote unquote success down there. And I don't know how you don't have success down there when you've got Nick Saban, buying his teams all over, whatever. But then you got a guy who comes out of nowhere in Tennessee who hasn't had, a top tier talent at quarterback since Peyton Manning. And, you every once in a while you get those guys, who would have thought Josh Allen coming out of Wyoming, Teddy Bridgewater out of Louisville, even though Bridgewater is still I kind of lump around Tua where they've had success, but they're not top caliber guys. But you know what I mean? They come out of these small schools every so often. And but they brought Hendon Hooker into a good position. I think Goff's got 1 or 2 years left on his contract. Hooker's coming off of an injury, so he's going to redshirt basically this year, and he can learn the system. Now, what's going to hurt is if they don't retain Ben Johnson next year, then he's got to learn a whole new system that next year, but he's still got time, so they've got a quarterback they can develop there.
I think it's time to raise the question if Bart Starr was the last truly great quarterback to come out of Alabama.
Probably.
Bryce Young, the 5'6" quarterback.
Yeah. I had to laugh. They showed a picture of. I saw a picture of Bryce Young at practice on Twitter, and even the coach, who was like 40 yards away, still looked taller than he did.
There's that really infamous photo of him with Mina Kimes, and she's taller than he is.
My favorite piece of content to come out of Twitter is RF Hansen, one of the Vikings beat writers, I think for PFF, posted a picture of Bryce at the combine walking right next to a tight end who just towers over him. And RF quote tweeted it and said something like, the scary thing is that tight end is 5'11". I fully believed it.
Yeah. I mean, we don't know. I mean, I was even surprised Kyler Murray had early on success, and he's 5'10", 5'9", 5'10", something like that.
Yeah, but Kyler is stocky, though. Bryce is not.
So, yeah, but height, no matter what, that's why you don't see a lot of quarterbacks that are under 6 foot, because you got to remember most of your offensive linemen are 6'5", 6'6".
Yeah.
If you can't see over them to make the throw, you're not going to be going to be doing much.
Well, it's like the biggest concern that I heard. Last thing I want to say before we move on to the other positions. The biggest concern for me and for other people with Bryce was that he doesn't have enough weight. I don't think because I'm thinking in kilos, but he's not even 80 or 90 kilos, which is 190-ish pounds, 200 pounds. When he weighed into the combine, a lot of people were pretty dubious about it, and that's kind of the bigger concern, more so than height, because I'm not sure if he's gonna actually be able to survive in the NFL taking hits on the regular.
Yeah, I don't know. I want to say that they made a big deal out of it, that he actually weighed in at 205 or 210, something like that. And it's well, you're still 5 foot nothing, because even Drew Brees, who was 6 foot, had to modify his game to throw over his tall lineman. Because if you ever watch him, he always had a hop to him. So he always hopped up onto his toes to make the throw.
Yeah. All right. So outside of the NFC North, what teams do you think will be the best? I mean, I kind of predict, maybe it's a little bit of a hot take. I've been thinking this for a little while, that the NFC East is going to be the best division in football, which I don't know if that's a hot take or not or whatever, but between the Eagles and the Cowboys, who I predict to remain strong, the Giants are kind of still on the up. And I think that Washington has a lot of potential there, and they played actually quite well towards the end of last season. Our defense is actually pretty good. And even aside from the NFC East, NFC South, I think the Panthers are probably going to be doing better than they did last season. The Bucs, kind of still in the air. And the NFC West, obviously the 49ers are still there, man. And the Seahawks are also kind of on the rise. I mean, who do you think from each division is going to be the big dog?
I mean, with the NFC in general, it's hard to see any multitude of contenders like there are in the AFC. I really see the Eagles being in a tier of their own at this point. 49ers closely following, like you mentioned. And then there's just kind of a bunch of question marks on what those teams are going to look like this season. I think Cowboys and Giants are two teams that you mentioned that fit in that question mark category. Quite a few others too. I think you could lump the Lions and Packers in there as well.
When I was up in Green Bay for OTAs, a guy asked me who I thought would, a hot take, who was going to be in the Super Bowl this season. And I really picked, the AFC pretty quick. I'm still a Buffalo believer. I think they've got a pretty damn good team. But I struggled, and I still struggle trying to come up with an NFC team.
Yeah.
Because it's wide open. I mean, you've got your guys. You got the Eagles, who I reluctantly finally settled on was Philadelphia, because it's my God, think of all the other teams that aren't would have really not looking good type off seasons. And I mean, the Buccaneers downgraded from Tom Brady to Baker Mayfield. Carolina better hope Matt Corral can step up and fill in for Bryce Young when he gets knocked out. Or who else is down there? I think they signed the Red Rifle, Andy Dalton. But Seattle had a nice offseason. They had a pretty good draft. I really loved their draft.
JSN, man.
Yeah.
Well, they just made a lot of picks throughout the whole draft that just made a lot of sense for them. But then again, it's a gamble because you don't know what they're going to do in the NFL until they actually do it. But yeah, like Joey just said, Eagles, 49ers, depending on how the quarterback play goes on there. And that's about it. I mean, I keep saying this in every episode we've had. I really am excited for the Packers season because it's an unknown. But realistically, the Packers could go anywhere from like 3-13 or 3-14 or whatever it is, or 13-4, because we don't know. And I know Jacob said last week that, you would think that they would at least win 6 games. There's no way that they're going to go, they're not going to win a game or they're going to only win 3 games. But there is a possibility because injuries take their toll. Maybe Jordan Love takes a hit and then he's not comfortable in the pocket the rest of the season. Whatever happens. But when you look at the rest of the teams in the NFC, there's nothing there that really whets your appetite for the team that you want to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. And that's scary because all the good teams are coming out of the AFC. So does that mean the AFC is going to be dominating the Super Bowl for the next, 2-3 years?
Kind of feels like it.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, you got the Chiefs, you got the Bills,
Bengals, Chargers, Jaguars.
Right.
The Jags, man. Jags going to be
Pittsburgh could be on the up and up. They got the young, Kenny Pickett going on. They made a lot of solid draft picks outside of Bigfoot. What's his name? Washington, the guy that Nick wanted all off season until we.
Donnell Washington. Yeah.
We found out that he was a complete.
Yeah. I was in the same boat.
Yeah. But it's scary that the NFC or the AFC is the dominant conference, and something's got to happen. Hopefully some of these NFC teams start, and you also got to look at it. The teams that are all in cap hell right now, most of them are coming out of the NFC.
It really, like as you said, it feels like the NFC is attempting to meet the AFC standards, and obviously the Eagles quite good, 49ers quite good, and there are good teams in the NFC. I don't think anyone's questioning that, but the AFC is in control, and when you look at the top tier of the AFC, I mean these are teams that are all contending for the best team in the league, and it really felt like. Kind of some of those years with Brady, the real Super Bowl was kind of happening in the AFC Championship. And it's kind of, like even when Peyton was on the Colts, right? It's that same kind of feeling where the person in the team from the NFC is like, sure, they're good, but really how good are they compared to the AFC? And between the Chiefs, the Bengals, who I think, are going to remain amazing, the Bills, who are kind of in the last year or two of this window, and like you said, like the Jags, I believe the Jags are going to be really good coming up here. I mean, the Broncos still have the potential to be like pretty decent, and then even like the Titans still find a way to be good, right? I mean, like there's so many fantastic teams in the AFC that it's kind of hard to get too excited sometimes. And Mahomes is the big one, right? And I think that's kind of what life is going to look like for the next 10 to 15 years with him around.
Well, we didn't even mention that the Titans just signed DeAndre Hopkins today for a 2-year contract. So, and granted, their quarterback situation isn't, grand, but, you got him and Burks and all those guys down there that, they've got a core going on. But it just came to mind. I think maybe a sleeper for the NFC could probably be New Orleans. Derek Carr and that, So, I mean, it's a long shot, but they could be a dark horse contender. But we're going to see what Derek can actually do now that he's out of the black hole of Las Vegas.
He's got Jamal Williams in his backfield, so he's golden.
That's all you need.
Yeah, that's exactly.
That's why I keep that picture still on the wall.
And so something I want to talk about here as well is, who do we think is going to be kind of coming down from last season? Who do you guys think are kind of fakers in this conference? Someone that the kind of put secret pushovers.
San Francisco.
Really? That's controversial.
Well, think about it. You've got Trey Lance and Sam Darnold and Brock Purdy at quarterback. I mean, they've got talent. There's no doubt about it. They're going to win a lot of games, but they could also lose a lot of games due to quarterback play. And, Trey Lance is coming back from injury. Brock Purdy's coming back from a pretty serious injury. Sam Darnold is, 2 seconds from walking the streets as a free agent. I mean, it goes back to what I said about the Bears. If you don't have that competent quarterback, it doesn't matter how many weapons you have. It's not going to do you any good.
Yeah.
And we don't know what Trey's going to do. Right now he's a glorified running back because that's all we know he can do is run the ball. We don't know how well he can sling it. Brock Purdy, we don't know how well he's going to throw the ball when he comes back because, that's a pretty serious injury that he went to. Now, he did it in an alternative surgery type way, so they're hoping he can be ready quicker.
Yeah, but also he mentioned offhand that he wasn't sure if he was even going to play this season.
Right. So, and if he would have had the normal surgery, he wouldn't have been playing this season at all because that's Tommy John. A Tommy John surgery for a pitcher in baseball is a season death sentence. I mean, you're done for a solid year. You're not even throwing the ball for almost a year. A quarterback's almost the same way, but they did it. They did that mesh cage or whatever around it, and that's supposed to, be a quicker heal or whatever. And like I said, then there's Sam Darnold, who has not had any success at any stop he's made.
The fascination with Sam Darnold from Shanahan is really strange.
So,
that's
what I mean. Yeah, go ahead.
I was going to ask Joey, who do you have?
I mean, obvious answer as far as record goes is Minnesota, but I don't think they're even going to be, as far as on-field play, I don't think they're going to be that much worse of a team, but their record is just going to be completely flipped. And then
that's entirely fair.
Yeah, and then I would say Tampa, but they were terrible last year too, and somehow managed to win the division.
It was a weak division to win.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And something I want to ask just to kind of finish up here, guys, is so, let's say the Packers are good, right? We're in the wild card and, Jordan Love is playing at, decent to average level. The defense is, the top 15 thereabouts. Which of these teams do you think that the Packers would actually have a chance against, one-on-one? Like being realistic and serious, if they played this just to an average level, like a 11 win, 10 win kind of level, which of these teams do you think the Packers could realistically unseat in a playoff game?
It's between the top two teams. I see that as a hard matchup. I remember watching the Seahawks versus 49ers wild card game last year, which is the game the Packers would have been facing San Fran in, and just thinking, Man, I'm a little bit glad they did not beat Detroit in Week 18. So that's difficult, but I think my answer as far as like a realistic playoff opponent would be Dallas. We saw them beat them last year. Their defense is interesting. It's a question mark. They seem to have, well, at least through one game, Matt LaFleur seems to know how to beat Mike McCarthy. And honestly, that game would have not had to I believe it went to overtime. Yeah, it did, because Mason had that game winner. But it wouldn't have had to been that close if Amari Rodgers just catches that punt late in the game. So I think Dallas is a realistic, beatable game there.
I'm going to swing for the fences. I'll say Philadelphia.
Okay.
If we go with what Nick just said, where the offense is at least being an average offense and Love is producing at an average level, and the defense is stepping up and playing, because realistically, even last year they weren't even playing average. They were still, pretty bottom of the barrel. So if we're looking at an average team, and Jordan Love almost led a comeback against the Eagles last year, if he can come in and be average and play at that level like he did in the time he played against them last year, the sky's the limit. I mean, they could easily topple Philadelphia. It's kind of funny, Joey, that you said that you were scared to go against San Francisco last year. But then after you sit there and watch the game and they knock out both their quarterbacks, it's like,
exactly.
We would have walked all over them.
Yeah.
But no, I really think that if we go by Nick's parameters, where the offense is rolling at an average, a league average, and the defense is at least being in league average, they could theoretically win the NFC, period. Because like we were just talking about, there's nothing there. You have the Eagles, you have maybe the 49ers. Like I said, the dark horse would be either Seattle or New Orleans. But there's not much else.
Yeah.
So, I think the sky's the limit if they even play 50-50 ball throughout the whole year.
Yeah, I mean, it's crazy you mentioned that Eagles game from last year that they let Jalen Hurts run for 200 plus yards, and they still only lose by 8 points?
Yeah.
It's crazy. And I'm sure the Eagles game plan changed throughout the game, but
and the Packers never did.
Yeah.
Like, one of the points that Ross Uglum made after that game, which I still find so poignant, is that even with all the rushing yards that we gave up, the Packers could have won that. If Rodgers played a little bit better and the offense was just a little bit better, they could have won that game, which is, again, one of the reasons why I don't actually believe in the whole Russian defense thing that much. Maybe not literally worst in the league over Brian Gutekunst's tenure bad, but I don't think it's it's that big of a priority compared to the passing defense, because they could have won.
Yeah.
Agree and disagree at the same time, because there were a few games that, like the Eagles game, had they held a little bit on the run game a little bit better than they did, that would even have been an even more of a winnable game, because you would at least win overtime had you stopped Jalen, just even a few yards, or
2019 versus Fran.
Yeah. Or the New England game, they were pretty much running all over the place, and they were down to the third string quarterback. So, I understand what you're saying, Nick, and I do agree to a point, but you still got to be able to stop a little bit of the run.
No, exactly. Yeah. Because, the Packers, by EPA, have been the worst rushing defense team in the league for the past 5 years. That's
yeah.
My God.
Like, cumulatively, for those 5 years, their average has been the lowest. Which is pretty telling. I think if the Packers, if Jordan Love, like we talked about with those parameters, I think they're firmly in that second tier. And I think, this really, I don't know, this team kind of gives me a little bit of like a 2019 vibe, I think that, if Jordan Love kind of, overperforms just a little bit, I think they'll almost comfortably, make the first round of the playoffs. And it'd be funny again, like if a team like Seattle or like you said, New Orleans, I think they match up kind of well against those teams that aren't like as super ultra physical. And I think Green Bay has the capacity to match up with like good receivers as well. If we get something out of these safeties here, out of Anthony Johnson Jr., they have the corners to run with these receivers, right? And that's kind of what we saw against the Cowboys last year, which is why I think the Cowboys should be really scared of the Packers if they do have to meet up in the playoffs. Like, yeah, I think the answer can't really get any better than what you've presented, Joey. I think the Packers focus on running the ball this season and their ability to snuff out these teams with that rely on their receivers more so than their running game. I think that's like the ideal matchup for the Packers. I don't think you could get any more perfect for what our strengths are, right? I think it's because the Eagles are so physical and because the 49ers are so physical, the Packers really kind of struggle to make ends meet in the trenches there. But yeah, these kind of like finesse teams, I think that the Packers really, it's anyone's game.
Definitely, yeah. And Aaron Jones always has a great day against Dallas, so there's that too.
Absolutely.
Aaron Jones is just a great guy, great player. And I know there's been a lot of talk this last couple of days about overrated, underrated, and Aaron Jones is like the ultimately underrated player in the league. He gets no love out of very little. I mean, you got your guys like James Jones or whatever that will step up and say, hey, watch this guy. But even, coming out of almost nowhere in the 5th round out of UTEP and becoming like this major player on this offense, it's just, and now with Rodgers out of the way, and I know I keep harping on this, but they're going to rely on the run a lot more. And I know they're going to give Jordan the option to do what he needs to at the line if he needs to make any changes. But I can see it being more of a run-heavy offense. And, it's going to be a split between Aaron and AJ and whoever RB3 is going to be. I mean, there's going to be a good battle for RB3. You got my guy Tyler Goodson, and then you got Lou Nichols. And, of course, they bring in – or they still got Patrick Taylor floating around out there. So, yeah, if anybody's underrated, it's majorly underrated, and that's Aaron Jones.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say he's underrated by his own offensive play calling staff.
Yeah. Well, Nick, how many times last year during the season were, the over-unders that we were doing, it was always, is he going to get more than 9 carries in a game? Is he going to get more than 5 carries in a game?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I distinctly remember, especially towards the end of the season, every week Joe does the over-unders, and he'd be like, Aaron Jones under over, 56 yards. And I was like, 56 yards? Come on, as if, over. And it was like 40. Like, oh my God, come on.
So, all right. So I got a question for you guys before we go into our last bit. So kind of speaking, and this has been rolling in my mind. Somebody mentioned it on Twitter, and I think you said something too, Joey. And so it's been rolling in my mind. It's a 2-parter. One, how many wide receivers do the Packers keep this year? And who are they?
Okay. Yeah, I did tweet something out earlier today, and I kind of was just looking back at how many wide receivers the Packers have kept since 2019. Having kept less than 6 under Matt LaFleur, only one time, that was 2020. And it's interesting because I would say they're going to value experience, but the experience is literally Jeff Cotton. Like that's it. So, I think you have the 3 draft picks from 2021 and then, or 2022 rather. And then from this year, Wicks and Reed, I think, are locks too. Grant Dubose is going to have to fight for his spot a little bit, but they could keep 6, they could keep 7. Gonna come down to who can contribute on special teams, and obviously who has the better preseason. But from all that we heard out of minicamp, it sounds like Jeff Heath or Jeff Cotton and Malik Heath really came out of nowhere, had some great practices, and obviously they have to build on top of that to make a good enough impression. But yeah, I could definitely, I think, to answer your question, I think 6 at that wide receiver position, and I'll say that Cotton skews out Grant DeBose over there, and they'll store Grant on the practice squad for his rookie year.
What do you think, Nick?
Yeah, well, I think, yeah, basically the same as Joey. I think my thoughts echo yours exactly. I think that, like, Graham DuBose is going to be that guy this year who everyone's like, oh, you can't put him on the practice squad, he's going to get signed. Everyone wants to get Grant DuBose. They'll put him on the practice squad, and it'll be fine.
Yep.
I think he's exactly that kind of player. And I love Grant DuBose, but I just think the way that this coaching staff raves about Samori Toure, I have a tough time seeing him getting over him unless, something unexpected happens. But between Grant DuBose and, I loved Bo Melton in draft process last year. I think he's going to stick around on the practice squad. But yeah, like, as you said, Joey, I wouldn't change anything about my predictions. I think you kind of have to carry, like at least 7, right? I mean, all the draft picks and from last year and Wicks, like you said, Reed this year. I mean, there's not going to be much room, and also because we're trying to beef up the tight end room as well. But like there's not going to be heaps of room to just have extra guys floating around doing nothing, and that's kind of the reason why Malik Taylor got into the active roster last year. It's because of the special teams ability. So yeah, I mean, I can't find a single thing to disagree about.
Right. The only one that I would disagree with is I think it would probably, if they're going to not keep DuBose on the active, which I said that in the tweet when I responded to what you said earlier, Joey, that, he's not a lock because, even though he's an athletic type guy, he's still a very raw talent.
Right.
So he would probably be better suited to. This is when I wish that one of either the USFL or the XFL or whatever would become that minor league team or system for the NFL, because then you would say, all right, well, you are going to go down there and work on your stuff, and then if we have an injury or anything, we'll just call you back up. But if Nick remembers right, when we were doing the wide receivers pre-draft, I mentioned Malik Heath in it, where I said that he seemed like he had all the talent in the world, but he didn't give 100% on the field. That if he would give 100%, I think he would have been talked about like I was talking about Jonathan Mingo or, guys like that, where they would have been he would have been top of the heap. Now, I don't think he ran like the fastest 40 at the combine or whatever. And, like I said, his work ethic really made him drop in the process. But now he's showing up. He's got something to play for. So obviously, it's basically just shorts and whatever, and we won't know until he hits the pads. But I think he could realistically make the roster either as the 6th or 7th guy. I think they'll hold on to 6 because, kind of like Nick said, they're going to start valuing tight ends a little bit more. I think they were keeping so many wide receivers before because they didn't have that abundance of talent to stockpile at the tight end position. But now they got DeGuara, who's going to be the flex guy. They've, the fullback tight end combo, the 2 draft picks. And of course, God forbid they get rid of Tyler Davis for any reason. But, I think it's going to, because they're going to have to even out. There's no way they're going to be able to keep, 11 pass catchers and then keep 3 running backs on top of it. That you're starting to stockpile at places where you don't have the room. But if they keep 6, I could see Malik being the 6th guy. If they keep 7, Malik is definitely going to be that 7th guy.
When you were talking about Malik, and I thought you were going to say his only downfall was he can't catch a cold. And I was like, wow, this is not the Jonah Hill from Moneyball pitch that I was expecting here.
No, he really.
Heath is my guy. Bang the table.
No, I loved Heath. I loved what he could bring when he actually brought it. But there were too many times that you would just see him jog his route, or you know, he'd cut his route short because the ball wasn't coming to him, or stuff like that. And it's like, well, you know, if you would have actually tried, you know, you would have been the second or third read. And so it's whatever, you know. Obviously, I'm not a professional scout and I'm not a coach by any means. So what the hell do I know?
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, I'm ready to finish up here, guys. Joey, if you have anything that you want to plug, or you know, obviously the show you just did, like we mentioned at the top of the show, go ahead. So let us know what you want to share.
Yeah, absolutely. So, co-hosts on Underage Packers Podcast. Follow that Twitter and also me on Twitter. Nothing too great on there, but I'd appreciate it. And then, you know, like on Underage Packers Podcast, we're really getting into the swing of things. This week we'll have Green Bay reporter Cassidy Hill on to preview training camp, and then after that, we're pretty much into the swing of things. No breaks until the bye week.
Joey, it was great having you on. I really appreciate it. I know we've been trying to schedule this for a little bit now, but you know, things happen and whatever, but I really appreciate you coming on and spending time, and hopefully you enjoy your time up in Green Bay, and we'll make sure we get Big B on here the next time so we can just do one big group thing.
Yes, absolutely. I don't know if it's just being so tired, but it was awesome to be on here and kind of just relax and have a talk about football at 1 a.m.
Well, that's how you usually have to do it, is just be tired when you talk.
Yeah.
It's a secret ingredient is exhaustion.
Yeah. If you can't, you know, if you don't have alcohol around, you know, you gotta, I guess I wouldn't know, but
I was going to say, we're not supplying.
Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Well, guys, as always, you can find us on Twitter. Find Joey at JoeyVZ_. You can find the Underage Packers pod at Underage Packers. You can find Outback Packers at Outback_Packers. Myself at NicholasGRGR. And finally, Joe at Iowa_Joe86. Make sure you follow, rate, like, subscribe, all the good stuff wherever you're listening to this. And until next time, we'll see you later.